Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. In Myanmar, thousands of people of anti-coup protesters have gathered again across the country day after the killing of 2 people in clashes with the police. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the use of deadly violence in the country. Facebook has also deleted the main page of Myanmar's army, saying it coordinated harm and incited violence. In Afghanistan, at least 1 person has been killed and 14 wounded in an explosion that hit a car in the Lashkar Gah city of Helmand province. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Iran says its decision to end SNAP inspections by UN inspectors does not breach the 2015 nuclear deal. In an interview, Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said the United States must lift all sanctions on Tehran and return to the deal. Meanwhile, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi has met with Iran's nuclear chief Ali Akbar Salehi in Tehran to find mutually agreeable solutions. The global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 111 million, with 2.4 million deaths. In Brazil, the virus has claimed another 1,200 lives overnight, with nearly 246,000 fatalities since the pandemic began. Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 38 deaths and more than 1,300 infections in the last 24 hours. Nationwide, there are over 12,600 deaths and 571,000 infections.
Your champion for 2021, the Australian Open men's singles champion, Novak Djokovic.
And in tennis, world number 1 Novak Djokovic beats Daniil Medvedev in straight sets to lift his 9th Australian Open title in his 18th Grand Slam victory. And in the Pakistan Super League, Lahore Qalandars beat Peshawar Zalmi by 4 wickets in their opening match at the National Stadium in Karachi. They chased down the target of 141 runs with 9 balls to spare. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. In Myanmar, tens of thousands of anti-coup protesters have gathered again across the country day after the killing of 2 people in clashes with the police. Earlier, police arrested a famous actor for opposing the takeover. Several thousand people protested in Yangon, Michichana, Monyewa, and Bagan and chanted slogans against the military rule. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the use of deadly violence in Myanmar. Talking to Twitter, he called on the parties to respect election results and return to civilian rule. Meanwhile, Facebook has also deleted the main page of Myanmar's army, saying it coordinated harm and incited violence. The military has been unable to quell the demonstrations and a civil disobedience campaign against the detention of Aung San Suu Kyi. In India, farmers say the government is exploiting COVID-19 restrictions to halt their activities and meetings in Maharashtra. Talking to the media, union leader Rakesh Tikayat said that the same ploy was used against the protesters opposing discriminatory citizenship laws. In Chandigarh, thousands of people participated in the grand meet of farmers. Meanwhile, a farmer rode a tractor over his ripe wheat crop in Uttar Pradesh to register protest against the new laws. Speaking on the incident, Tikayat warned more farmers would do the same if the center does not listen to their demands. The growers also slammed the government's fuel price hike, saying it slashes the minimum support price for their produce. In Afghanistan, at least one person has been killed and 14 wounded in an explosion that hit a car in Lashkargah city of Helmand province. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. This comes a day after 5 people were killed and 2 others wounded in 3 explosions that rocked Kabul. Magnetic IED blast attacks have alarmingly increased in the capital in recent months. More than 50 people have been killed and more than 70 wounded in Kabul attacks during the past 30 days. Violence across Afghanistan has escalated even as the Taliban and the Afghan government are holding peace talks in Qatar. Iran says its decision to end SNAP inspections by the United Nations examiners does not breach their 2015 nuclear deal. In an interview, Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said the U.S. must lift sanctions on Tehran to rescue the pact. Zarif criticized the Biden administration for continuing the maximum pressure policy for Donald Trump. He reiterated that Tehran will not yield Washington's pressure. Meanwhile, the International Atomic Energy Agency chief has met Iran's nuclear chief in Tehran. Rafael Grossi is in Tehran to find a solution to continue essential verification activities. Tehran is also studying EU proposal for an informal meeting of JCPOA members and the United States. The global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 111 million, with 2.4 million deaths. In Brazil, the virus has claimed another 1,200 lives overnight, with nearly 246,000 fatalities since the pandemic began. More of the latest regarding the pandemic in this report.
France's number of new coronavirus cases increased for the 3rd day in a row compared with a week earlier. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says all adults in the UK will be offered a first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine by the end of July. More than 17 million people in the UK have now had the first dose of a vaccine. Meanwhile, a High Court judge has ruled UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock acted unlawfully. The ruling said Hancock failed to publish multi-billion-pound COVID-19 government contracts within the 30-day period required by law. Meanwhile, Australia is pushing hard to get a majority of the population inoculated. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said the precedent by getting the jab and urging the Aussies to follow amid scepticism and hesitation regarding vaccines.
I have, by my own example today, joined by the Chief Nurse and Midwifery and the Chief Medical Officer of our country, together with those Australians who are in the top priority of this vaccination program, to say to you Australians, it's safe, it's important. Join us on this Australian path that sees us come out of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Over in Morocco, authorities have detected a further 21 cases of the virus. Israel has reported a 95.8% drop in COVID-19 infections among those who have received 2 doses of Pfizer's vaccine. Iran has closed several crossing points at its border with Iraq to curb the spread of the COVID-19 UK variant. Kuwait's Civil Aviation Authority has extended an entry ban for non-Kuwaiti citizens until further notice. Citizens are still allowed to enter, but they must spend a week in quarantine at a hotel and another week at home. Coronavirus cases are rising in a number of Indian states, including Punjab, Maharashtra, Kerala and Madhya Pradesh. The rise in infections comes amid the detection of a new virus variant in Maharashtra.
While in Pakistan, 38 more people have died of COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This has pushed the death toll to 12,601. The Health Ministry has reported 1,329 new infections overnight. The ministry says over 571,000 people have tested positive for the virus so far, out of which more than 534,000 have recovered. The ministry said at present there are more than 24,000 active cases in Pakistan. Meanwhile, the National Command and Operations Center is expecting to receive another 5.6 million vaccines by the end of March. According to the NCOC data, 2.8 million doses from COVAX are expected as early as the first week of next month. Russia says the intention of Western countries to resolve global issues within a narrow circle is baffling. This comes after the special online session of the Munich Security Conference held on Friday. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said that the West views Russia and China as threats. In a statement, Zurkova took aim at the organizers for inviting the Western leadership while leaving out Russia and China. She slammed the West for imposing their decisions on the rest of the world through a prism of rule-based world order. The spokesperson urged broader international cooperation on a common agenda in the United Nations Democratic Agency's framework. Turkey says its common interests with the United States outweigh the differences. In a televised speech, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Ankara wants improved cooperation with Washington. Erdogan said he wants to strengthen cooperation through a long-term perspective on a win-win basis. He said Turkey will continue to do its part in a manner worthy of the bilateral strategic partnership ties. Erdogan added that the relations between Ankara and Washington had been seriously tested recently. Ties between the two NATO allies have been strained over Turkey's purchase of S-400 defense system and U.S. support for Kurdish militia in Syria. Voting has begun to elect Niger's next president. This marks the country's first democratic transition of power since independence from France in 1960. The runoff vote pits outgoing President Mahamadou Issoufou's chosen successor Mohamed Bazoum against former President Mohamed Ousmane. Bazoum beat Ousmane in the first round of the polls in December last year by more than double the votes. The 71-year-old Ousmane was Niger's first democratically elected president that ousted in 1996 military coup. In the United States, a United Airlines flight has survived a crash scare after suffering a right engine failure shortly after takeoff from Denver. The Boeing 777 carrying 231 passengers and 10 crew members was bound for Honolulu. More in this report.
For passengers taking the early weekend flight from Colorado to Hawaii, it was going to be a smooth trip. However, that soon changed. The flight suffered a right engine failure shortly taking off from the ground. The Federal Aviation Administration said the plane scattered debris but returned safely to the airport. It said there were no immediate reports of any injuries on the ground.
It took off like a normal flight, and I'm kind of afraid to fly anyway, and we got in the plane and I thought, this looks like a nice plane. It's clean, it looks newish. I was like, this will be fine, easy going. And we started and everything started well, and then all of a sudden it was just this big, you could just feel it like boom, and you could hear it, and we started shaking.
The Aviation Administration added that the National Transportation Safety Board will investigate the incident. Police are urging locals not to touch or move the debris, as they are required for the probe.
This park, on a day like today when it's not as cold as it was last weekend, we could have hundreds of people here. And the fact that we are still not getting reports of any injuries is absolutely shocking at this point. It's amazing.
The 26-year-old 777 was powered by two Pratt and Whitney engines. Boeing has declined to comment on the crash scare, referring queries to United Airlines. Investigators will focus on what caused the engine on the plane to fail and will look at whether a fan blade failed.
In the United States, 3 people have been killed and 2 others injured in a gun store shooting in a suburb of New Orleans. The police said the shooter was among those killed. It said the shooter struck 2 people in the shop before he was shot dead as the staff and customers fired back. The police added 2 wounded were hospitalized in stable condition. None of the victims were immediately identified as the investigation into the incident is underway.
This is a really developing scene, so I'm going to be very brief on what I can give you at this point in time. We had one initial shooter here at the scene who hit 2 victims inside the location. Both of them have been pronounced deceased here at this location. It appears that several individuals ended up engaging that original suspect, whether inside the location or out here in the parking lot. We have a total of 3 deceased, including the 2 that were inside.
It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, in Spain, 9 people, including 3 minors, have been arrested after police clashed with demonstrators in Catalina. Violence flared as over 6,000 gathered in the Spanish city for a fifth night over the jailing of rapper Pablo Hansel. Police said 9 people were wounded, 2 of whom were taken to the hospital. Protesters threw bottles at police, set fire to containers, and smashed up shops in Barcelona. More than 60 have been arrested in the protests so far. Hansel has been sentenced to 9 months in prison for his anti-establishment raps. A Pakistani peacekeeper has died in Sudan in an accident in the south of Darfur region. Lance Naik Tahir Ikram was a member of the police unit of the United Nations African Union mission in Darfur. Pakistan's UN mission said Ikram was driving a mission truck when he faced the accident. In a message, Pakistan's United Nations Ambassador Munir Akram said Ikram's services will be forever remembered. Pakistan has lost 157 personnel and 24 officers during UN peacekeeping missions in the world's most turbulent regions. In India, 5 more bodies have been recovered from the flash flood areas in the Himalayas. Police say the death toll from the glacier burst in northern Uttarakhand state has now risen to 67. Search and rescue efforts are underway as 137 people are still missing. Authorities said the bodies were recovered from the Tupvon Dam site, which was damaged by the avalanche. Part of a glacier near the Nanda Devi mountain broke off on the 7th of February, unleashing a devastating flood. Locals say the glacier broke after nuclear devices abandoned on the mountain by the Indian military in 1965 exploded. International Mother Language Day is being observed across the globe to promote linguistic and cultural diversity. In a message, the United Nations said languages represent who we are and protecting this identity is a matter of human rights. This year, the theme of the day is fostering multilingualism for inclusion in education and society. The day was announced by UNESCO in 1999 and has been observed globally since 2000. According to UNESCO, linguistic diversity is increasingly threatened as more and more languages die out. At least 43% of the estimated 6,000 languages spoken in the world are endangered. Feeling frustrated and stressed out, well, Brazilians can now vent their anger and fury in the newly opened Rage Room. More in this report.
Inside a warehouse on the outskirts of Sao Paulo, people can swing giant hammers at old televisions, computers, and printers, demolishing the machines and shredding the glass into tiny pieces. This is not an exhibition of insanity, but merely a way to release pent-up stress and anger amid a seemingly everlasting pandemic. All people have to do is pay a fee of $4.64.
This is good for those who live here. It takes me almost 2 hours to get to work and 2 hours back. You have that feeling also during this pandemic, worrying about your health, but it's great to come here and release some adrenaline and pent-up feelings.
The owner of the business says he has received a fair number of customers since the opening of the Rage Room a month ago.
I think it was the best moment to be able to set this up here in Cidade Tiradentes, related to everything that people are going through, a lot of anxiety, stress. Sometimes people miss work or even work a lot at home. I believe this here is like an escape at the moment.
Customers say releasing their stress in the Rage Room stops them from taking it out on other people, like family and friends.
Visitors to the world's largest snow maze in Canada are set to find something unexpected as they undertake the quest to navigate this year. Find out more in this report.
Yeah! After a period of uncertainty about whether it would be allowed to open due to the pandemic, the world's largest snow maze in Manitoba is once again welcoming customers. The larger layout and staggering the times visitors can enter the maze are a nod to social distancing guidelines. The owner, Angie Mass, says the maze is 91% bigger this year.
In 2019, we applied for the title of the world's largest snow maze, which we got in February. And this year, just with COVID and everything, we wanted to make it bigger.
For many who have been quarantined in their homes and dealing with travel restrictions, navigating the maze is a chance to stretch their legs and experience a little adventure.
We We love outdoor entertainment. It kind of just fell into place. We run the corn maze, of course, in the summer, and then the Sunflower Expo as well during that time. And then as we get to fall, we have the Haunted Forest, and then we're like, we need to do something in the winter time. And I guess we love mazes as well, so there we go. Now we're into snow mazing.
For Mass, expanding the maze was no small undertaking. The massive labyrinth is 240 feet by 240 feet and took 6 weeks to build due to unusually warm weather.
Gulf markets are trading mixed today, demonstrating subdued activity in the absence of major triggers for a bearish mood. Abu Dhabi Securities Exchange is trading marginally higher, getting its biggest boost from banking stocks. The Dubai financial market added close to 0.5%, bouncing back from 3 days of consecutive drops due to low corporate earnings. Bahrain shares have edged down slightly after Arab banking cooperation that dropped 1%. Kuwait, the premier index, is trading somewhat flat, with financial and industrial stocks pulling it in opposite directions. Meanwhile, Qatar Exchange has gained fractionally, with Qatar National Bank adding 0.5%. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.